Half-Life Alyx is by far one of the most enjoyable experiences I've had playing a game since I got a VR headset in July. The gameplay is tight, the artistic design of the game is fantastic, and the storytelling is really intriguing. But something feels off. It's pretty well known that empty source maps make for an off-putting atmosphere and a tension that builds subtly. Originally, this video was going to exclusively be about Half-Life Alyx, but then I got to thinking, why do I feel this way about these games? What is it about Valve games that makes me feel like I'm being watched, and that I'm not alone even in single player? And I think I found my answer as to why.
Good morning, and welcome to the Black Mesa Transit System.
In Half-Life 1, for basically the entire game, you are being watched. Every so often, you'll come face to face with a man in a suit. He might be talking to a scientist, watching your arrival to the Black Mesa facility, or overlooking your progress from a pier. And every time you notice him or look directly at him, he seems to notice you and turns to walk away, not before adjusting his tie. And I think this is where the feeling all began for Valve. In the preceding years, Valve dropped banger after banger after banger, and in almost all of these games, they have this overbearing feeling of being watched. Gmod almost always has this air of unease and uncertainty as to whether you're alone or not. In Team Fortress 2, you're being watched by the administrator, and in Left 4 Dead, a horde of zombies is constantly chasing you. But these games are multiplayer first. They're obviously going to feel strange when playing alone. And I think that outside of Gmod, the feeling of paranoia is far more present in their single-player games. Half-Life 2 is beyond an extension of the first game in so many ways. It added so much. The physics were and still kind of are groundbreaking, the gunplay is solid, the writing is great, and it's overall a fantastic experience. But it's also a very jarring experience, especially coming from the first game. The first game started out in the 90s, in New Mexico. This game immediately starts with this.
Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman. Rise and shine. Not that I wish to imply you have been sleeping on the job.
I don't think I have to tell you what kind of emotion this invokes. The monochromatic flashes, the speech pattern, and the proximity to the uncanny face all contributes to that feeling. However, it also enforces the notion that you are being watched. But G-Man's enigmatic employers aren't the only people watching you. As soon as the first cutscene finishes, you're thrown into the centerpiece of the game, City 17. Heavily inspired by George Orwell's book 1984, almost immediately as Gordon hops off the train, he's photographed and his presence is documented. Even inside the train station, you can feel that kind of oppressive watch that the Combine have imposed over humanity. Even when you escape City 17 halfway through the game, you're still not alone. One of my favorite levels in the entire game happens outside of City 17, Ravenholm. It's an old, eerie prospector town that got bombarded when the Combine came to Earth. It's little more than a ghost town by the time that Gordon gets to it. Yet even here, even at the edge of safe civilization, the ambiance and the background sounds you hear off in the distance hint that you're still being watched. Even while in Ravenholm you are still being watched by G-Man's employers, you're also being watched by a more friendly face who makes himself known after the first few minutes of the level. His entrance is foreshadowed through off-putting and vaguely religious exclamations.
These peculiar demons which dwell in matter, but in whom no light may be found. For the days of my life have vanished like smoke, and my bones are parched like ash, and let all my impurities be as fuel for that fire until nothing remains but the light alone.
He then makes a comically triumphant first impression.
I am Father Grigori. You have already met my congregation.
He follows you throughout the entirety of the level, providing help here and there. And despite that, every time he shows up, he feels somewhat untrustworthy and unpredictable.
I have a more suitable gun for you. You'll need it. Catch!
Even still, by the end of the mission, it turns out he was just a little off-putting. But he was still watching you, nonetheless.
Salvation. I suspect you have little wish to remain in Ravenholm, so I will show you to the mines.
Half-Life 2 has been incredibly skilled at causing paranoia in the player's mind, even since the old betas and demos of the game before it launched. And if you're interested in that, I'll link a video in the comments below about Half-Life 2's beta. If you're looking for something that leans a little bit more into that paranoid feeling, I would highly recommend checking it out. But Half-Life and Half-Life 2 are only two Valve games. I'm not Valve, which means I can actually count two. Alyx kind of piggybacks off the feeling that Half-Life 2 set up. It's set almost entirely in the underbelly of City 17. The feeling of being watched is incredibly noticeable. And as previously mentioned, I believe that the oppressive watch the Combine has instated in City 17 is responsible for this kind of paranoia. The absolutely jaw-dropping architecture in Half-Life Alyx further enhances that feeling. And the fact that this paranoia can be felt to this level, to me, solidifies Alyx as another great sequel in the Half-Life games. Portal is a strange game. The sterile environment, the futuristic design, and the test chambers all feel like they're from a strange dream. And still, just like Half-Life 1 and 2, Portal almost immediately starts off with this overwhelming feeling of being watched. And that is because, well, again, you are. The voice over the intercom immediately greets Chell as she wakes up.
Hello, and again, welcome to the Aperture Science Computer-Aided Enrichment Center.
The cameras and the frosted windows that clearly precede observation chambers all give off this immediate notion that you aren't alone. I believe that out of all of the Valve games I talk about in this video, Portal 1 and 2 are the games that most obviously want the player to feel seen. GLaDOS is constantly monitoring your progress, providing insight, setting up puzzles, and overall giving off this feeling that if you were the rat in the maze, she would be the scientist.
Most importantly, under no circumstances should you...
But she isn't the only scientist. In Test Chamber 16, you're told,
Due to mandatory scheduled maintenance, the appropriate chamber for this testing sequence is currently unavailable. It has been replaced with a live fire course designed for military androids.
It's not a terribly difficult puzzle to figure out. Yet in the middle of solving this puzzle, on the floor, the word help is seen scribbled in what seems to be blood. This message leads to something that the devs call a rat den. These rat dens are scattered not only all over Portal 1, but 2. In the lore of the Portal games, after GLaDOS was brought online, she released a deadly neurotoxin, killing almost every scientist in the Enrichment Center. One of the scientists that survived, Doug Rattman, is responsible for these hideouts. Rattman is the protagonist of the comic Lab Rat, a comic which released a few days before the launch of Portal 2. And in Lab Rat, we can see him taking ziprasidone, an antipsychotic prescription drug used to treat schizophrenia, amongst other things. This would explain the kind of murals we see in these hideouts. They're disconnected, disjointed, and oftentimes they really don't seem to have any real relation to each other. They all carry disturbing imagery, but not a lot can be gleaned from these except for the warning, the cake is a lie. That is, until Portal 2.
Good morning. You have been in suspension for 9999999. This courtesy call is to inform you that
Anyone
all
in there?
test subjects should vacate the enrichment
Hello?
center immediately. Any test subject
Are you
not emerging
gonna
from
open the
suspension
door
at this time
at any
will
time?
be assumed to have exercised his or her rights
Hello?
to remain in
Oh, God. You look good. Looking good, actually.
Portal 2 is, in my opinion, a perfect sequel. Not only for expanding the game's mechanics, introducing multiplayer, or adding on to the already great cast of the original game.
Hey, listen up down there. That thing's called an elevator, not a bathroom.
I swear I know him.
But also because it explores some of the more unsettling and more psychologically disturbing elements of the first game. Reveals as to the nature of the Bring Your Daughter to Work day, the tragedy between Cave Johnson and GLaDOS.
Those people in the portrait, they look so familiar.
And most relevant to this video, it provides more rat dens. The dens in this game feel more lived in. They feel like they're home to someone who knows the ins and outs of the facility. It almost feels alien in contrast with the test chambers. They also confirm that throughout the entirety of the first Portal game, Chell was being watched not only by GLaDOS, but also Rattman. Every so often you'll find yourself in a rat den, and sometimes a song aptly named Ghost of Rattman plays. And if you give close listen to the sounds behind the synth instrumentals at the forefront of the song, you'll hear this. One can draw the pretty obvious conclusion that these mad ramblings are Rattman and the facility's walls. They give off this feeling that if you were to press your ear against the cold walls of the testing facility, you'd be able to catch the end or the beginning of these ramblings, almost as though he's close and that he is still watching. Something I noticed when recording clips, playing and replaying certain moments, is if you play these games without slowing down or taking your time, this feeling is almost not present. It's the quiet moments, the dark corridors, the unpopulated hallways. These places that are so meticulously well designed and detailed allow for that paranoid feeling to begin to take hold. These games and their settings, in my opinion, have stood the test of time. As I was throwing together this video script, I realized that the reason for this paranoia has almost literally been staring me in the face the entire time. The atmosphere wants you to feel seen, because throughout the entirety of all of these games, in some way you are actively being watched. The settings create in-your-face horror, the body horror of the head crabs, the threat of neurotoxin in the ventilation system of the enrichment center, and the otherworldly cosmic horror of Zen. But in the background of the story, whether it's Gordon, Alyx, or Chell, the player is being watched. Even knowing that inside of the game files on a meta level, there are no models for G-Man's employers or Doug Rattman. Throughout all of these titles, it's almost as though you know, in the pit of your stomach, that you truly aren't alone.
Well, end of the line.
Hey everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who helped make this video possible by providing feedback on certain edits and just helping me throughout the process. I really appreciate all of you. In kind of a different direction for a second, I'm going to be shifting my content focus more on these kinds of videos. I really loved making this one, and I really hope you enjoyed it as well. Not to be cliche, and I'm not saying you need to, but liking this video and subscribing helps out a lot. And whether I do or I don't pop up in your recommended again, be sure to take care of yourself. Oh, by the way, I'm going to try to have not such a big gap between videos next time. Anyway, thank you again, and I'll see you later. Take care.